Hello boys and girls, and welcome back to Victory Sports Virtual Homeschool Sports Jam. I'm so excited you're here. I'm your coach, Coach Joel today, and I am also really excited that we are onto a new sport today. We're gonna be working on some basketball. So I hope that you had fun last week playing soccer with me. I'm even more excited for this sport. This is my favorite sport. I think we're having a good time. But before we get to our sports, we've got to get our muscles nice and warmed up. So let's get right to it. Come follow me. All right, for today's warm-up, you actually don't need a whole lot of space. Everything we're gonna do, you can do just right where you're standing, right where you are. It's really simple. The first thing we're gonna do is a simple toe touch. And all it is exactly what it sounds like. You're gonna bend over and try to touch your toes. But here's the trick, you gotta keep your legs as straight as possible. Don't bend those knees, you gotta keep those knees nice and straight. I'm actually really bad at this, so I guarantee you can do better than me at this, but I'm gonna give it my best. So we're gonna do a 10-second toe touch all together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I feel like an old man. All right. Whew. The next one we're going to do is a quad stretch. This is your quad right here, this part of your leg. And so in order to do a quad stretch, we are going to just simply grab our foot and pull it into our bottom like this. Sometimes I call it a flamingo stretch because you look a little bit like a flamingo when you do it. If you start to lose your balance, that's okay. You can put your foot down and then just hop right back up into it. Or you can put your opposite arm out to help you balance. That sometimes helps me as well. So we're going to do 10 seconds with our right quad, 10 seconds right quad stretch on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Great job. Now we're going to switch sides. I sometimes lose my balance on this side, so I might have to pop up and redo it once or twice, but that's all right. On the count of 3, ready, 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome job. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is a little bit more active and takes a little bit more energy, but it's really gonna get your muscles nice and warm, nice and going. It is called a burpee. Now, if you've never done a burpee before, that's okay. They're pretty fun, they're pretty new, and all it is you just start standing like you are, and then you're gonna jump down and get into a push-up position. So you're not actually gonna do a push-up, but you're gonna jump down like this, into a push-up position, back up, and jump as high as you can into the air. We're only gonna do 5 of these all together, just because it's probably a little bit new for most of us. So you can do it right with me, you can do it a little bit slower if you want to, or even a little bit faster, but make sure you do all 3 steps of the burpee. We're gonna do 5 of them all together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, that's 5. Whew. I gotta check my heart rate. Oh man, I'm dying. All right, we only got one more warm up and then we're ready to play some basketball. A really old one, really simple one is a simple jumping jack. Sometimes at Victory Sports, we call these star jumps because you look a little bit like a star when you do them. They're really simple if you haven't done them. All you gotta do is start standing straight up with your feet together, hands down by your side, and you're gonna jump, spread your legs out, and while your legs are doing that, you raise your arms all the way over your head like this, so you look a little bit like a star. Then you jump again, and you jump right back to where you were at the beginning. Legs together, hands down by your side. We're gonna do 10 jumping jacks all together, going at my pace. On your marks, get set, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome job. All right, I don't know about you, I'm definitely warmed up. I might even be a little too warmed up. I'm pretty tired already. That's okay, I'm excited for a little bit of basketball. So grab a basketball or any type of ball and meet me right back here for our basketball refresher. Now that you got your ball, you're ready to go. We're gonna work on two things today. We're gonna work on dribbling and shooting. And if you don't have a hoop, like this one back here, that's okay. You can still practice your shooting. If you do have a hoop, that's awesome, and I'll give you drills and skills and games to do with both of those. But before we get to shooting, the first thing I want to work on is dribbling. All you need is a basketball for this one, and we're gonna do 10 dribbles with our right hand all together. Remember, when we're dribbling, we wanna use our fingertips. Not like quite like this, but we don't wanna use our palms. You wanna use just the pads of your fingers to dribble the ball. So right hand, 10 dribbles, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Now we're gonna switch over to the left hand, same thing. Use those fingertips. 10 dribbles with the left hand, ready to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome job. Next thing we're gonna do is actually a little bit trickier. It's called a crossover. The reason why we call it a crossover is pretty simple, because it goes from one hand and it crosses over to the other hand. So I want to see if you can do 3 dribbles with your right hand and then cross over to your left hand and do 3 dribbles with your left hand. It looks a little bit like this. 1, 2, 3, cross over, 1, 2, 3. And then we're actually gonna keep going and keep going and keep going. So get your ball, put it in your right hand, and get ready to follow me. We're gonna start with 3 dribbles in our right hand, cross over to the left, and then we're gonna do 3 dribbles in our left hand, cross back over to the right, and we're gonna keep on going. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, crossover. 1, 2, 3, crossover. 1, 2, 3, crossover. 1, 2, 3, crossover. 1, 2, 3, crossover, and stop. Now I want to see how fast you can do it. I'm gonna give you a little bit of time. See how fast you can do it. Maybe you can do it even as fast as me. 1, 2, 3. Let me see what you got. All right, the next drill we're gonna do, you're gonna need a little bit more space, and if you have cones, now is the perfect time to get those cones out. If you don't have cones, that's okay. You can use almost anything. You can use water bottles, you can use cups, you can use other balls, you can even use chairs or whatever else you have lying around the house that you can take outside and line up like cones. I have 4 cones. You can do this with 3, 4, 5, 10, 12, 15, 100, 6 million, however many cones you want to do, the more the better. But what we're going to do is you're going to start at one side of your cones and you're going to zigzag through your cones, crossing over at each cone. Now remember what the crossover was, is you had the ball in one hand, cross over to the other hand. So you're gonna zigzag and cross over at every single cone. So I'm gonna take 1 dribble, cross over, dribble, cross over, dribble, cross over, and then I'm actually gonna go around this last cone and right back into zigzagging all the way back. This is a really good drill for all of you to practice to continue to get better at basketball. You can do it as fast as you can. You can try to do it making no mistakes. You can time yourself. There's a bunch of different ways to do this drill. I'll do it one time for you, and then I want to see you do it. Zigzag dribbling, great way to keep practicing, getting better at dribbling. All right, boys and girls, now that we've finished our warm-up and we've finished doing some skills and drills, it's time to take a deep breath, relax, catch our breath, rest our muscles, and do a little bit of a challenge time. Now, I know it was only a week ago, but I still am gonna give you guys a pop quiz. You've got 5 seconds. Somebody tell me what our first challenge time was about. Ready, go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you said Daniel in the Lion's Den, you are correct. One of my very favorite stories in all of the Bible, and one of my very favorite characters in all of the Bible. And if you remember the story of Daniel in the Lion's Den, we talked about how even when things don't seem fair, even when it feels like God doesn't have a plan, He does still have a plan, and He does still love us. And just like Daniel, I challenge you guys to trust God and know that He still has a plan. Now, today's challenge time is a really, really similar story that I still think connects really well to today when we talk about life not being always very fair, and it feels like sometimes we don't get what we feel like we may deserve, but we still need to trust God and know that He has a plan, because He is a just and fair God. So today's challenge time comes from the Bible in the Old Testament and is one of my very, very favorite stories. You can find it in the Old Testament. Is the story of Joseph. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire story of Joseph, because I'm sure a lot of you guys know this story and have heard about this story. So I'm going to kind of jump around and skip around, and you're not going to hear the whole story. But if you would like to, you should ask your mom and dad. They'll take you back into the Old Testament and they can read you the whole story of Joseph. But our story begins with Joseph. And if you remember, Joseph was the youngest brother of many, many, many brothers. But Joseph's father loved him more than all of his brothers. And that made his brothers really angry. And not just angry, but they actually became very jealous of Joseph, because they wanted to be loved by their father just as much as Joseph was loved. And Joseph's dad loved him so much, they actually gave him this really, really nice robe. And if you remember the story, the robe was technicolor, or it had a bunch of different colors, and it was this really beautiful, valuable robe. And all of Joseph's brothers couldn't stand it. They couldn't bear that Joseph was so much more loved than their dad. So they stole his robe from him and they threw him into a big pit. And not only did they throw him into a pit, but they actually ended up selling him into slavery. Now let's pause right there, because what has Joseph done wrong thus far in the story? Nothing. He's done nothing wrong. It's not his fault that their father loves him more than everybody else. Joseph has done nothing wrong. If anything, Joseph has actually always been very loving and kind to all of his brothers. But still, he gets thrown in the pit, and then he gets sold into slavery. But the story doesn't end there. Joseph then goes on to Egypt, and he becomes a slave in Egypt. He gets bought into a slave. He gets bought by a slave owner in Egypt. But Joseph doesn't stop. Joseph doesn't pout, and Joseph doesn't wonder, why me, God? This isn't fair. What did I do wrong? Instead, he works so hard that he becomes one of the most important slaves in all of Egypt. He becomes the head of the house for his master. So you'd be thinking, man, Joseph's doing really well right now. He's a slave, but it's going well for him. Maybe he'll get rewarded for how well he's done. That's not the case. Unfortunately, Joseph's master's wife lies about Joseph. Joseph did nothing wrong. In fact, if anything, Joseph did exactly what God wanted him to do in everything that he did as a slave. His whole time as a slave, Joseph did exactly what God wanted him to do. But his master's wife lied to his master about Joseph. And so Joseph's master had no option but to throw Joseph into prison. So now Joseph's in jail. Joseph went from the most beloved son of his father to being in a pit, to then being a slave, and now he's in jail, and he hasn't done anything wrong this entire time. In fact, not only has he done nothing wrong, he's done everything right. This, just like our story with Daniel, this just isn't fair to Joseph. Joseph has done absolutely nothing wrong, and now he's in prison. Now he's in jail. So does Joseph start whining and pouting, start wondering, why, God? Why are you doing this to me, God? Why do I deserve this? No. Joseph's stuck in jail. A little bit how I feel being stuck in my house or in this garage. Joseph's stuck in jail. But instead of whining and pouting and wondering, why me, oh God, this isn't fair, Joseph becomes really famous in jail for something. God gives Joseph the power to interpret dreams. And so Joseph begins interpreting different people's dreams because that's what God wants him to do. And Joseph knows that he needs to trust God because he knows that God has a plan. So after a long time, many years, the Pharaoh of Egypt hears about Joseph and hears that he can interpret dreams. So he asks for Joseph to be taken out of jail to interpret his dreams. And Joseph does such an amazing job interpreting the Pharaoh's dreams that not only does Joseph get released from prison, but he actually becomes the second in command in all of Egypt. He becomes the most powerful man in all of Egypt besides the Pharaoh. God had a plan for Joseph the whole time, and Joseph didn't know what God's plan was. He never knew. Joseph didn't know from the beginning when he was his father's favorite, He didn't know when he was in the pit. He didn't know when he was a slave. He didn't know when he was in prison. He didn't know until he finally saw God's plan was that God wanted to make Joseph one of the most powerful people in all of Egypt. If Joseph would have whined and complained and said, "Why me, God? This isn't fair," I bet that story doesn't happen. I bet God doesn't make Joseph one of the most powerful people in all of Egypt. So just like Daniel, when Daniel knew it wasn't fair, that he wasn't supposed to pray to God and that he might be thrown in the lion's den, and just like Joseph, when all those things happened in Joseph's life that weren't fair, I want you guys to remember that you're going to trust God because God loves you. And you're going to wait on God to show you what his plan for your life is. And you may not know what that plan is for a really, really long time. I still don't really know what God's plan is for me, but I know he has one. I know he loves me. And I know that if I trust and obey him, then that plan is going to be awesome. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for another wonderful day of Victory Sports. God, I pray that you help us to be like Joseph. God, I pray that that we would trust you even when we don't know what your plan is for our lives, even when we have no clue, even when things don't seem fair, that we would trust you and know that you love us and have a plan for us. In your name, amen. Let's get back to our sports. All right, now that we've worked on a little bit of dribbling, we're going to go on to shooting. Let's work on a little bit of shooting. Pop quiz time. Months ago when we worked on shooting over at First Presbyterian Church in Wheaton, I taught you guys a really interesting acronym. The word was BEEF. If you remember what an acronym is, that means each letter of beef stands for something else. So B-E-E-F. If you can remember any one of those words, start shouting them out. I wish I could hear you, but I can't. But the B in beef stands for balance. Balance. You want to make sure your feet are not all the way together, but also not super far apart. You want to have them just about as wide as your shoulders are. And you're going to bend your knees just a little bit. If you're standing straight up, you don't have a whole lot of balance. You want to bend them just a little bit. That's what the B in beef stands for. The first E stands for elbow. You want to make sure that once you're balanced, you're holding the ball with your elbow right, going straight up and down, just like so. So I'm right-handed, so I've got the ball in my right hand and my right elbow straight up and down. My left hand can be a little bit out. You don't have to have both elbows straight up and down. But if you're left-handed, it'll just be the exact opposite. Your left hand will be holding the ball, and your left elbow will be straight up and down, and your right elbow can be a little bit out if you want it to be. So you've got your balance, you've got your elbow. The next E is eyes. You want to make sure that those eyes are pointed right at the hoop, right at the rim. You don't want to be looking at the ball. You don't want to be looking at mom and dad. You don't want to be looking at the coaches. You don't want to be looking at anything else. You want to be looking right at the hoop when you shoot it. So you've got your balance. You've got your elbow. I'm looking at an imaginary hoop that's behind the camera. The last letter is F. The F stands for follow through. Remember follow through? I told you guys a goofy story about when I was a kid. My mom used to put all the cookies in this cookie jar on top of a counter that I couldn't really reach. So in order for me to get a cookie out of the cookie jar, I had to get up on my tiptoes, reach my hand way up, and put my hand into the cookie jar just like this so I could grab a cookie out. That's exactly what a follow through is, just like this. You flick your wrist, so it's going down like that. Hand, arm all the way up, flick the wrist. That's your follow through. I've got my balance, got my elbow, got my eyes, and I've got my follow through, just like this. Now, if you don't have a hoop at home, practicing your beef is really easy, right? You can do what I just did. You can work on your balance, elbow, eyes, and you can just shoot the ball right in front of you. Or if you don't have a hoop, what you can do is you can actually pick a spot on the ground. So I'm gonna pick this yellow line right here, and I'm gonna do all my beef and see if I can hit the line, but using beef. I've got my balance, got my elbow, my eyes are right on the line. I'm gonna follow through. Oh, not very good. Let's see if I can try again. Balance, elbow, eyes, followed through. A little bit closer. It's actually pretty hard, so that's another really good way that you can practice shooting even without a hoop. Now, if you do have a basketball hoop, this drill is a lot of fun and is a really good way to continue to practice getting better and better at your shooting. Yourself, all you need is a ball and a hoop. I call this game Beat the Pro because you're gonna play against an imaginary professional basketball player. Here's how it works. Every single time that I shoot it, either I score or the pro scores. If I shoot it and make it, I get 1 point. If I shoot it and miss it, the pro gets 1 point. And I'm gonna play the first person to get to 5 points. Let me see if I can give you a little demonstration. All right, I've got my ball, I've got my hoop, I'm ready to see if I can beat the pro. Remember how this game works. If I shoot it and I make it, I get 1 point. If I shoot it and I miss it, the pro gets 1 point, and it's the first one to get to 5 points. So you keep track, let's see how I do. I'm gonna shoot it, and whether I make it or miss it, I'm gonna go get the ball, and I can go anywhere else on the court and shoot it from there. Uh-oh, 0 to 1. 1 to 1. 2 to 1, I'm winning. 3 to 1. 4 to 1. This one's for the win. Oh! 4 to 2. 5 to 2. I beat the pro. Now it's your turn. First 1 to 5, you make it, you get 1. You miss it, the pro gets 1. All right, boys and girls, thank you so much for joining me at week 2 of virtual homeschool sports jam at Victory Sports. I had a blast playing basketball with you. I hope these drills and skills and games were fun for you and gave you a chance to stay active, keep practicing basketball, and have a little bit of fun as well. I miss you guys. I love you guys. I can't wait to see you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.